All right, so to continue our wall framing video series, we've pretty much got the structure up, and we're going to be talking about installing OSB sheathing today on the exterior of the structure. OSB sheathing does several things. First and foremost, when you put this up across all your stud work, what's going to happen is it's going to permanently brace this structure. Once this is fastened down, the studs aren't going to rock left and right. They're not going to sway in and out. Okay, so it's going to be braced because the nailing pattern, there's so many nails in it that it's going to hold steady and it's going to connect multiple studs in various places. So it's going to be solid structure. So first thing is it is bracing. Second thing, it provides a surface for your exterior finishing or your siding to attach to. So if you're running vinyl siding, if you're doing hardy plank, which is a fiber cement siding, if you are doing cedar siding, some type of a wood product, or even brick, you can put a wire mesh over this, put a waterproof barrier, wire mesh, mortar, bricks. No matter which way, what type of siding is, it gives you space in between the studs, so you don't have to just hit the studs when you are trying to do your siding. It gives you that exterior backing, makes it sturdy. So there's two reasons why we have siding up there, or not siding, sheathing. So I'm going to go through the installation process of this sheathing, and I've got the sheets cut down. Now, I have them cut down to 2 foot by 4 foot sections to simulate what it would be like if you're doing a large house. This is a very small house. It's only 6 feet by 6 feet tall, 8 feet wide. So putting up, I could do like 2 sheets and I'd be done. And that wouldn't show you the whole process. So I've cut mine down to a 2 foot wide by 4 foot long. And I'm going to show you a couple different methods. I'm going to show you laying them in horizontally. I'm also going to show you how you would install them vertically. And I'm also going to talk about what's going to happen when you get to a door or window. So when you get to a door or window, how do you cut around this? So we'll talk about all that. I'm also going to talk about the fastening patterns. I'm going to talk about the advantages of running them horizontally or vertically. I'm going to talk about just other installation tips and techniques that you're going to need to know. All right, so without further ado, here we go. So in other videos that I've done, I've talked about reference corners and where you start your layout. In my building, this is my reference corner, going from this way across. Okay, so since it's 8 feet long, it honestly wouldn't matter if I went from either way when I started my sheathing. But let's say this was a 10-foot building. If I did my stud layout, 16-inch on center is going this way, but I started my sheathing going this way, what's going to happen is I'm going to end a sheet with no support. So you always want to start with that same direction. Okay, so I started my 16-inch layout this way. So this is the side I'm going to start with my sheathing. Now, sheathing normally happens, you're going to use a nail gun with 8 penny nails, which is just almost 2.5 inches long. For this here, I'm going to use 1.25 inch screws, just to be a little bit faster, and I'll be able to take it out later. So first thing you want to figure out is, where does your sheathing start? Okay. If I'm going to start my sheathing at my bottom plate, that's where I'll go. But a lot of companies, what they do, instead of starting at the bottom plate for the wall, they cover the header joists and the rim joists. They even go down to the sill plate. So that's actually down here. So I'm going to get it set down here. I'm going to get it flush on the end this way. All right, I'm fastening it in place. Now, before I just start nailing this, come over here. I'm going to make sure I am level across this. I've got my sill plate covered. Now that I have 2 nails in it, it's tacked in place, and I would be able to finish this properly. So fastening pattern for this is very similar to subfloor, where every supported edge, you're going to have nails every 6 inches. But every stud, intermediate stud it crosses, then you want to have them every 12 inches. So it doesn't necessarily have to be every 8 to 10 inches. So every 12 inches on regular studs, every 6 inches along the perimeter. Anything that lands. Now over here, there's nothing I'm hitting here, so this is not a supported edge. But this way, I missed that one. Now, what's going to happen on the edge of this, since half of this sheet is supported and the other half is not, you're going to have to angle your screws and your nails just a little bit in order to catch that stud. And that's okay. It's designed to where it can do that. But this is where that making sure your on-center stud patterns are spot on. If this stud here is this way 1/2 of an inch, I don't have anything really to connect to, so I'll have to put in a scab, a second little cripple stud here to continue. All right, so every 6 inches. Now, I would continue this all the way around, but I'm going to try to give you guys a little bit of reprieve from me putting screws everywhere. So I'm just going to put a few screws around the perimeter. Now I'm going to go back to my my studs, my intermediate studs. So I've got one on this end, I've got one down here. So every foot should be about right in the middle where I'm going. Now, if you can see in the video, if you look real close, you can see some hash marks here. Sometimes your OSB is going to have hash marks printed, sometimes it's going to have lines printed. And those are a rough idea of where your studs should be. Now, it's a good guide on most pieces, but sometimes factories make mistakes. So always kind of double check when you lay a sheet on here. Look at it. Do they look like they line up? If they look like they can line up, you can follow them. If they don't look like they line up, you're going to have to do some guessing and figuring it out. Now, you can always measure over, put a mark on the top, put a mark at the bottom, and run chalk lines, snap chalk lines down this. Now you'll hit the stud every time. But sometimes you don't have time to do that. So you always want to make sure they're good. I actually did a job, was working on a job last week, and these hash marks were 1.5 inches to the left of where they needed to be. So we were following the hash marks, and we were missing nails left and right. So we had to then, okay, on this sheet, put them back over. And then several of that stack of sheets, they were wrong, up like 3/4 of an inch off, which will make you miss the studs. So that's always something to consider. It's just like it's a guide, but it's not always 100% accurate. Keep that in mind. All right, so this one over here, every 12 inches on this intermediate stud. One at the top, one at the middle, one at the bottom. This stud is secure. This stud is secure. I can go through with Jackson Kings and I can fasten those down. Right now, I'm going to skip them. Just to make this video go a little bit quicker. Now, I've got this sheet in place, and again, I'm running these horizontal. I'm going to put my next piece beside this. I'm going to continue this course of sheathing, and before I start building up. That's going to be a couple options. Number one, it's going to be more accurate, and number two, it's going to give me something to set my next sheet on with. So now, as I lay this up here, I'm not going to run this really tight. Actually, I'll give you the first question for the day is, and if you don't have your paper pen ready, then pause this video, grab a paper pen, and you're ready to answer this thing. Here's question number one, is what's the fastening pattern for the edges and the studs? How far apart do you put screws along the edges? How far apart do you put them along the studs? That's question number one. All right. You have that written down by now. If you don't, pause it, hit play. So this next sheet, I'm not going to just stick it tight in the seam here. But you might say, well, Mr. Wallet, the tighter it is, the stronger it is, right? Yeah, pretty much most of the time. With framing, yes, the tighter it is, the better it is. But with sheathing like this, you want to give it just a little bit of space, about 1/8 of an inch of space between your sheets. You might ask me, Mr. Wallet, why? Why do we do that? Well, the whole purpose is think about what season is coming up. We're in the spring right now. What's coming up after the spring? Summertime. And what's the temperatures like in summer? Yeah, they're hot. So think back to your physical science classes and then any kind of science class you've had in high school and middle school, even elementary school. What do they teach you about when things get hot and when things get cold? When things get cold, they contract. They actually shrink. Now, it's not a lot, but it does happen. Or depending on what it is. If it's wood like this, it's not a lot. But some plastics can shrink up considerably. But when it is hot, what does it do? It expands, right? So if we put these things in tight, and in the summertime, the house gets, it's beaten down with the sun because, nowadays when they put in neighborhoods, they cut every single tree down, and there's no shade for any of these houses. So the sun beats on them. It's a 95-degree day, and that OSB gets hot. And what's going to happen is it's going to want to spread out, and it's going to hit each other. And when they hit each other, it's going to cause ridges, and that can pop loose nails, and that can show bumps in your siding, so it's not good. So what you want to do is leave a little bit of space. About 1/8 of an inch of space is all you need to get it set up right. And then, if it expands, it doesn't hit anything. You're totally fine. So, sheet number 2, get it set up to the right height. You don't want to have these things low. You don't want to have them high because your next piece is going to be all off kilter. So, you get it close. Oh, and to get that space, neat little trick, you can take a nail, put it at the top, put one at the bottom. What it's going to do, it's going to give you that space and give you something tight to push to. All right? So nail at the top, nail at the bottom. I've got a little space in there. I've got it the right height, so now I'm going to fasten a couple screws in place. All right. Now it's held in place. I can come back through. So I'm just putting in, again, the minimum, not even the minimum number of screws, just enough to get this held in place. So now what I can do, I can pull out these two spacer screws. And I'm going to have the gap that I want and need along in here. So let's say I can go all the way down. I continue my run. And now I'm ready for the next course. All right, so I take my next course, and I set it right on top. Right, wrong, okay? You do not want to have one sheet directly on top of the other sheet. You want them to stagger. Okay? You want them to stagger so that you have that locked-in pattern. And if there is any type of ridge, any types of bumps, you won't see them just going one line straight up your house. Okay, so we want to stagger. So to do this, normally you're going to start with a full half sheet, but since I've got a 48-inch long piece, divide that by 2, it's 24 inches, but I'm on a 16-inch on center, so that's not going to work. But normally you start with a 4-foot wide piece. It would go right here. What I'm going to do is start with a piece that is long enough to get to the first stud here. I'm going to fasten that in place, and then I'm going to work my way across. All right. Now, I can lift this up a little bit, drop a screw because it's always bound to happen. Got one screw there. Here. All right. So now I've got this half piece in. Again, guys, you're going to follow those fastening patterns every 6 inches along supported edges and every 12 inches on every stud. So now that I've got those in, I'm going to run a little screw here. A little screw there. That's going to help me keep my piece of sheathing up at the right height. Okay. I've got the height matched over here. Well, I've got a space along this other side here. I'm going to start fastening while this plane flies overhead. All right. So I've got my next piece, and the next piece on the list will come through and get set in here. And again, this pattern, will go all the way up to the top, all the way around the side. We're laying them in horizontal. Now, before I move on to my next thing, I'm going to ask you guys question number 2. What is the purpose of these gaps? Why did I space the sheathing apart from each other 1/8 of an inch. That's question number 2. Write that down. Come back to this video. All right, so now we've come up to the window. Okay? And you have a couple of options when you're installing windows. Number 1, you can run everything, you can run it wild, just like what I'm doing right now. And you take your next pieces, and they would literally, you would cover up the window, and then you cut the boards out later. That's a pretty fast way to do it. Because once you have this top, or once you have it all fastened together, you come around on the inside of the structure and you drill holes. And those holes could be 1/2 inch wide, 1 inch wide, something like that. So you drill them right in the corner, and that gives a person on the other side, they can use a square and draw lines, or they can stretch a chalk and snap the chalk line down, and then they can cut it with circular saw. That's a viable option. There's nothing wrong with doing it like that. Now, and it's usually done like this if you are putting your sheathing on after your walls are stood in place. Some companies put their sheathing on before their walls are stood. And if you're going to do it that way, you have to do things a little bit different. This piece down here. Okay. If you are putting them up, or if you're putting the sheathing on before your walls are stood, what you're typically going to want to do is to cut this out before the wall is stood up. Now, there's several ways you can do this. You can lay the sheet on here just like I have, and then you come in. Here's part of your line here, part of your line there. And what you would do is you take your square, come all the way over, come all the way down, or what you can do is take a measurement here. Okay, that is 8 1/4 inches. Measure down 8 1/4. Put my level on there, draw it. Then I can cut with circular saw, and break off the corner, and that's going to get rid of this piece. I could do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. The other way of doing this is I've got my next sheet here. I would measure over and I would say, okay, I need 13 inches of space. So I would make a mark up here. And it's okay to make those things a little bit bigger. So if it says 13 inches, mark like 13 1/8, so that your OSB is back just a little bit. If it's back a little bit from the edge of your framing, you're okay. You don't want it back like 1.5 inches, but you want it, you don't want it sticking over where you're gonna have to come back with a sawzall and trim it up. Okay, and then you say, okay, I need to come down 8 1/4 inches. So then you would come down at that 13 mark. 8 1/4 inches, make that same mark over here. 8 1/4, make that same 13 inches here. And I would draw, cut, and it's already cut when you go to put it up. So that way, it's already going to have this. It's going to be an L-shaped piece. It's going to be there, and you're just going to be able to follow this around. It also, when you do it like that, it's much easier to hit your rough sill and all your jacks. You do it like this, and if you don't take any measurements, I'm sitting here trying to like eyeball up and try to figure out, okay, where does this come across so I can put my screw, every 6 inches along supported edges. Okay? Because there should be screws every 6 inches along here. Now you can easily measure and mark this stuff, and it's easy to hit, easy to find once it's measured. But if you don't have those lines, if you don't have those cuts, it can be more difficult to hit those and get those in the right places. Okay, so so that's sheathing horizontally. So what I want to ask you guys is your question number 3 is what are your options for installing sheathing around doors and windows? How do you cut those openings? What are your options to cut those openings? Okay. Well, you guys write this down. I'm going to pull this OSB off, and I'm going to show you vertical is next. Now, so got that going. We're ready to get this video happening again. Now I'm going to talk about running your sheathing vertically and what are the advantages and how to go about doing this. So running it horizontally, you're going to have all those seams between your pieces. Remember all those spaces I talked about? Well, if you add those up, people have done some studies. If you add those up, on the size of an average American home, all those little gaps and cracks in your sheathing equates to a 2-foot by 2-foot opening in your wall. Open year round, just like having a 2-foot by 2-foot window open year round. So let me give you an idea of what that looks like here. Okay, an opening this wide and an opening this tall. That's just open in your room, in your house, the side of your house. There's just air flowing in and out freely. Now, yes, on the outside of this, there is house wrap and there's siding. So it's not like it's just smack open like everything, but it's open enough to allow air to pass through. Now, why is that a problem? Because the more air that passes through from that hot outside into the cool inside, it's going to make your AC run more in the summertime, which is going to raise your bills, and it's going to have more power draw for the planet, and it's just not going to be good environmentally, and your bills are going to be higher. Okay? Or in the wintertime, it's cold outside, that cold air will seep in, or your warm air will seep out for those. And it's just going to be more costly for you. So the main reason why people are running vertically these days, I'm seeing it more and more myself as I drive around. I see new construction. They're running their sheathing vertically instead of horizontally. We always did it horizontally. I think 1 or 2 houses we did vertically. But my boss didn't think about this. It wasn't something that he really considered. It was just, it's easy to run them horizontal. So we did. It felt like we got more work done. But nowadays, when you run a sheet vertically, what you're going to notice is the top of your sheet has something to land on, and it's fastened down. The side and the bottom has something to be fastened to, and all sides. So even there can be those gaps, but there's wood behind those gaps, which significantly reduces air movement. I don't know how much y'all can hear in the background, but a FedEx truck just drove by, all being all loud and stuff. But having boards like on each side here, like there's a board behind this seam. There's a board behind this seam. And if this was raised up, there'd be a board here, a board here. That's going to significantly reduce airflow. Now, will it still be open? Yes, it'll still be open. Or like, will air still go through? Yeah, but it won't be nearly the same amount of air travel, so it's going to be better. And to help with that, remember I talked about earlier in this video that some companies will run their sheathing down across the sill plates and header joist sill plates, or even up into the next floor sheathing, or not next floor sheathing, but next floor header joist, things like that. Well, they make 9-foot and 10-foot long sheets so that you can run it and it can go from header joist to header joist and be completely sealed, and it ties the building together better. So there's options there. Okay. Now, I do want to show you a little trick I picked up from watching the video. This guy was building a shed by himself, and he's like, you know what? It's hard to hold a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet up and nail it. I hold it in place steady enough to nail it, at least to get the first nail in and be precise. So what he did is he measured down his distance, what he wanted to have, and then took a few nails, and 2 nails in every 4 feet. He would put one on the left side, one on the right side, where that sheet's going to land. So what I'm going to do, come down here, and put one there, and I'll put one over there. Now, what those 2 nails is going to give me, well, those are screws, but what it's going to give me is a place I can rest my sheet. Now I've got it set up to the height that I want, except those are a little bit low. Let me move this. Blooper, outtake reel. And even if they're not perfectly level, it'll give you something where you can shift them slightly, where you can get them plumb. Okay? So you see how I've got my sheet up here, top side hits, bottom side hits. Everything is all hunky-dory. Now it goes past this window opening here. But we've already talked about how you can cut this out after the fact. So now that this is up, you start fastening. Get them in the top end first. By getting them in the top end, it's not going to fall back on you. Now, remember what I was talking about with lines? These 2 lines right here and right here, if I did my layout correctly and I got my sheet set correctly, then what I'm going to be able to do is just fasten straight down those lines, assuming the lines are accurate. So I'm going to get just the corners in. Now, so again, I'm going to try to hit these. And if I look down here, I can see where my joists were hitting here and hitting here. And this one looks right on. This over here does not look quite right. So what I'm going to do, every 12 inches, Now, if you were listening to these and you heard that the impact driver, it spun freely, but as it got into that stud, you heard it click, 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 click. All right, that is like, you can tell by listening if you hit the stud or not. Like here, I'm gonna hope that I hit the stud. I did, but if I missed, actually, that line is off. I think this may just hit the. You hear how it did not click. Let me do that again, just so that you can hear it not hit the stud. Okay, and when you shoot a nail gun, there's an audible difference between hitting a stud and not hitting a stud. Now, sometimes it gets a little gray because if you just barely clip it, you'll hear something, but it won't be the same as if you hit that stud dead center. There's a thump when you use a nail gun and you hit that stud. With screws, again, especially with an impact driver, you'll hear grrr, or you can, like, it'll still pull the screws deep in there, but if it's not, the screws will just spin. And safety factor here, if you are using a nail gun, make sure when it comes time to put up your OSB, nobody should be on the other side of this, at least not in close proximity. Yeah, 30, 40, 50 feet across the building, yeah, you're going to be okay. If there's a lot of framework up in there, you're probably going to be fine. But you don't want somebody on the other side of this wall, because if you shoot a nail and you miss the stud, nails can blow right through this 7/16 OSB and keep going. Okay, do not be on the other side of sheathing when it goes up. That's a safety factor. All right, so vertical sheathing, I would every 6 inches along all edges and every 12 inches along these studs. Okay, that's the fastening pattern here, and this would go up. I would leave a little bit of a gap, so I'd come back in here with a couple of nails, put one at the bottom, put one at the top. I bring my next sheet in and work my way down the building. And the neat thing about this it goes fast because it's doing the entire story in one shot, and you're working down there, and it's just going really quick, really well. And again, the main advantage is air does not travel along these supported edges like it does when you have those gaps in between the studs. Now, some companies, what they'll do is they will take blocking, and where those gaps are in between the studs, they'll stick a piece of blocking in here. Just my luck, I get a piece that's wider than it actually needs to be. But they'll stick it in there, and that will cover up. I think, but that's a lot of extra work, because you're going to have to do this for every horizontal seam that you have in the structure, which could be several for every layer or every course of sheathing. So, all right, my last question number 4 for you, is explain to me your reasoning of the way you would rather install sheathing. Would you install it vertically, or would you install it horizontally? And think back on the things that I said. There are advantages to both. Horizontal is just a little bit easier, a little faster installation. Vertical, it's still pretty quick installation, but it gets rid of all those seams. There's just less air travel. So you tell me, which would you choose? If you were building your own house, or if you had a company building houses for your clients, which would you choose? Would you run it vertical? Would you run it horizontal? And explain your reasoning, why you think that. All right, so that's my installing sheathing video. Next thing we're going to talk about, I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to have y'all watch a few videos on YouTube about blocking, about actually no, I'm not going to have that's my other class there. Well, I've got some other videos, and I'll have you we'll talk about those kinds of things. So um, thanks for tuning in. Take a photo of your paper, submit that on Canvas. Try to stay current with your work so you don't get too far behind. Again, you have a great opportunity to increase your score here if you are doing work. A lot of people have already raised their grade by 4 to 6 points. So just by doing the work, doing this daily work. So keep that up, and you're going to see your grades continue to rise. All right. Talk to you guys later.